the breaking news coming out this morning is that it is believed, and confirmed, that Iran has been working and spying and infiltrating, really, to get engaged in this presidential election, not unlike we knew happened last time with sort of Russia getting involved and some of them getting involved in a lot of like Facebook groups or get involved in ad campaigns. This is where you got to be very careful with how you are receiving information. And this is happening. This is just breaking this morning.
That's right. So this is a report out of the Wall Street Journal, and it says that Iran is seeking to harm Donald Trump's presidential campaign in covert online influence operations, fearing a return to power by the Republican nominee would inflame relations with Washington, U.S. officials told the Wall Street Journal. So this is U.S. intelligence officials and spy agencies are observing the work that is happening from Iran, and this foreign influence campaign is against President Trump and his campaign. And they are using, quote, a vast web of online personas and propaganda mills to spread disinformation. So if you're just tuning in and didn't hear that we said Tehran and Iran, then you may think, oh, is this a show from 2016? Is Bob Mueller coming back? But what is shocking to me is that this is almost nowhere to be found on the internet. This is a pretty big report from the Wall Street Journal with sources within U.S. intelligence organizations and agencies, and yet it's nowhere to be found. If this was the opposite, if it was Putin working to undermine Kamala Harris, what you'd be seeing it everywhere, return of Russia, the collusion narrative, all of that fake news that we had to deal with for years. And yet, if it's Tehran, the Iranian regime doing this, I haven't seen this hardly anywhere.
Be very careful, especially on Facebook groups. Sometimes there would be groups that were like moms for, whatever. And you join those groups. What you didn't realize you were joining is a propaganda arm of what could be this time of Iran or some of these other countries that want to make sure, because they don't want to be dealing with a President Trump, they're doing their best to keep that from happening.
So what you're seeing is a pattern here where a foreign government is using online activities, whether it be through propaganda mills or fake bot accounts and things of that nature that are trying to influence the election. And they have a preferred candidate. They would prefer it not be President Donald Trump again. As we know, he took a very hard line against Iran. He backed out of the Iranian nuclear deal and enforced heavy sanctions against the regime. What happened next? President Joe Biden immediately tries to work on getting back into the deal, even with some individuals that had maybe a little bit too close for comfort ties with Iran, like Robert Malley, who has now had his security clearance stripped and has been booted from the administration and no longer able to do work on this. But we see that they tried to rebuild this failed policy, and it enriched the mullahs of Iran. And what do they do with their money? Well, they fund Hamas, Hezbollah. You're seeing a lot of that play out right now. You're also seeing them be able to finance an operation to try to stop President Trump from getting reelected. This is foreign election interference. And the fact that it's not all over the news, especially we know that there are credible threats against the life of people like Mike Pompeo, President Trump. These are things that we know that are coming out of the regime in Iran that has been enriched by the Biden-Harris administration. This is a foreign policy failure by the Biden-Harris administration. And because of that, they are able to pay and activate a campaign to undermine the integrity of U.S. elections. That should be a leading narrative as we are under 100 days from voting for the next president of the United States. But it's almost nowhere to be found.
They're going to try and go online, tell stories, support the Biden administration and oppose President Trump's effort to be reelected. I suppose at the margin in very close races, they could have an impact. They'll do this through underwriting third-party groups who go out and protest. They'll support this through think tanks that are consistent with their worldview. They will try and do this through what I think of as political interference, that is shaping the hearts and minds, impacting who decides this. I'm going to get up and go vote that day. We can't let this happen. I haven't seen the intelligence, so I don't have details, but I'm confident that the Iranians will try and influence this. It won't surprise me at all if the Chinese Communist Party does exactly the same thing.
This is the Wall Street Journal's reporting, but this story is almost absent from mainstream reporting as of right now. And with the history we have of the way that the media latched on to the Russia narrative and everything that the United States was put through because of that Russia narrative, and is it a glaring spot in the journalistic mind these days that really we're only seeing this out of one newspaper right now, and this isn't the front page story everywhere because it doesn't fit their narrative?
Undoubtedly. Your point's very well taken. I lived that, as did President Trump, with the Russia hoax for, goodness, two and a half years. And very serious efforts, underwritten by Secretary Clinton's campaign for president, to put this narrative that somehow Donald Trump was a Russian asset, to put that story out there and that the Russians were interfering. Then we remember with the 51 former intelligence officials who all said, don't nothing to see here with respect to Hunter Biden's laptop. And the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, they couldn't report it enough. And here we have a credible reporting from the Wall Street Journal that I'm confident the New York Times and Washington Post could replicate, and yet nothing, because your point's exactly right. They have a narrative, a storyline. They are all in for the Harris campaign and aren't going to lift a finger to report a story that might, in fact, help the Trump campaign. And certainly would make clear to the American voters that the Iranians are supporting the Harris campaign as well.
Share this with friends who are maybe getting involved in a lot of these, like I said, social media groups, or getting involved in conversations back and forth. And sometimes you can kind of tell. I posted something about the Olympics opening ceremony, and you could just easily, if you spend more than 3 seconds and don't freak out on somebody, realize when you're talking to a real person or you're talking to a bot. Mm-hmm. And often those bots have, under 100 followers and have maybe a weird image or a weird name. And a lot of times they say a lot of the same stuff. They're bot farming. Now, some of this is not just bot farming.
Right.
Some of this is real getting in there and getting involved in these conversations to try to sway public opinion. I think we saw that a lot in the last election. And I can tell you there are a lot of my friends who fell for it. And I'm going to encourage you to obviously be vigilant for yourself, but be vigilant for your friends. Come at it with love and support and go, hey, guys, maybe you're getting information from Iran. Maybe it's not actually what you think. Do some digging. And also, how much do we put on Facebook? How much do we put on Meta in general, or any of these social media platforms, X even, to make sure that there's some safeguards here, that those safeguards then don't actually impact real people. I think that's a big problem when you have so many people on these platforms spreading this kind of information. And when anyone could start a Facebook group and grow it, especially when you have huge groups of intelligence getting involved in it, you could spread like wildfire. All of a sudden, a group could go from 0 to 1 million people quickly.